Have you ever been going about a completely normal day when suddenly you feel an unexpected surge of energy, a quiet wave of motivation, a rush of excitement? You feel an undeniable sense that something big is right around the corner. But then you look around. Your room is exactly the same. Your life looks identical to how it did yesterday. There is zero physical proof that anything has changed. So logic takes over. You brush it off as a random mood swing, waiting for physical reality to give you a reason to stay excited. But this is where most people lose the momentum. That sudden, unexplainable feeling isn't just a fleeting emotion. It is a literal, physiological perception. You are feeling the shift before it becomes visible. We have all felt this strange contrast. One moment, there is a quiet certainty, a feeling that life is flowing effortlessly towards something new. The next moment, logic steps in. We look for physical proof, we find none, and the heavy friction of normal life returns. This pattern appears more often than we realize. We experience these brief flashes of anticipation, only to dismiss them as wishful thinking when reality doesn't instantly match our mood. And this is where the experience becomes genuinely mysterious. Why do these sudden shifts happen in the first place? And why does the energy vanish the exact moment we start looking for evidence? We usually assume our feelings are simply reacting to the world around us. But you may have completely overlooked the true function of this sensation. There is a subtle mechanism operating beneath these moments, a hidden rule about how your experience actually takes shape. Stay with me, because in a moment you'll discover exactly how this invisible pattern works, and it might change the way you navigate your entire life. Have you ever noticed how your life seems to operate in two completely different modes? In one mode, everything clicks into place. You get a sudden urge to go somewhere, and an unexpected opportunity appears out of nowhere. Life feels like it is moving with a supportive, hidden current. But then there is the other mode, the friction. The days where every effort feels like pushing against a heavy, invisible wall. We usually dismiss these cycles as completely random. We brush them off as just good days or bad luck, assuming life is simply happening to us by chance. And this is where things become interesting. When you look closely at your own life, the repetition begins to reveal something deeper. This is where the pattern becomes clear. The effortless moments and the heavy moments are not accidental. They always seem to follow a very specific internal shift. Have you ever noticed how the external flow only stops after you internally decide to doubt it? Why do these cycles repeat so predictably across entirely different areas of our lives? The strange consistency suggests these shifts are not luck at all. They are responding to a hidden structure, a literal rule about how your reality is being built. We usually believe that reality happens first, and our feelings simply react to it. We wait for the physical world to shift before we allow ourselves to feel the excitement. But this perspective flips that assumption completely upside down. Reality does not move from the outside in. It is built from the inside out. That sudden, unexplainable burst of energy you feel isn't just a random emotion. It is a literal translation of a new reality beginning to form. Excitement is not a reaction to something that has already happened. It is your body physically perceiving a shift in frequency before your eyes can see the result. It is the very first echo of the event arriving. This is where the entire pattern begins to make sense. Instead of a fleeting mood, that energy is actually a precise navigation signal. And the truth is, this guidance system is far simpler than we usually expect. It has always been there, operating quietly, often ignored because it just feels like ordinary enthusiasm. When you feel that internal shift, the reality is already changing. But how does this internal shift actually translate into physical events? And why does the physical world sometimes seem to lag behind the feeling? Think back to those moments when the effortless flow suddenly stops and the heavy friction returns.
Why does the resistance always appear the exact moment we start looking for physical evidence? The hidden rule behind this shift is simple. Physical reality is the very last thing to change, not the first. When you feel that sudden surge of excitement, your internal state has already shifted. You have already moved into a new state of being. This subtle mechanism has been quietly operating in your life the entire time, even if you never noticed it. Think of it like tuning a radio. When you feel that inner energy, you have just turned the dial to a new frequency. The signal is instantly there. The broadcast is live. But the physical world is dense. It takes a little time for the music to physically travel through the speakers. If you stare at the quiet speaker, conclude that nothing is happening, and drop your excitement, what are you actually doing? You are reaching out and turning the dial right back to the old station. This explains why the pattern behaves this way. The external world didn't fail to deliver the event. You simply changed the channel before the picture had time to appear on the screen. When you maintain the internal alignment, the physical reflection eventually has no choice but to catch up. The mechanism is brilliantly simple in theory. You tune the dial, hold the frequency, and let the physical world catch up. But in practice, this is exactly where the inner voice begins to argue.
When the physical reality doesn't change immediately, a heavy silence fills the gap between your excitement and the result. And in that empty space, conditioning takes over. Your mind looks around the unchanged room and demands to know why you are still excited. The inner dialogue kicks in. This isn't realistic. You need to focus on what's in front of you. Stop daydreaming. We have been deeply conditioned to believe that unexplainable excitement is just irresponsible impulsiveness. In fact, we usually mistake this sudden doubt for practical wisdom. We tell ourselves that our fear is simply us being mature, grounded, and responsible. So we demand physical proof. We trade the quiet certainty of possibility for the cold comfort of logic. This is where many of us lose the signal completely. By insisting that reality prove itself before we allow ourselves to feel the shift, we reach out and turn the dial right back to the old familiar station. The heavy friction returns and the flow disappears. How many times has caution silenced the true signal of excitement in your own life? Have you ever noticed yourself doing this? If you felt this signal and talked yourself out of it, share your experience in the comments below. Even though the mind often argues with the signal, there is a simple way to navigate the gap between the feeling and the physical result. It isn't about making dramatic, overnight life changes. It is a precise method of everyday navigation.
Whenever you feel that sudden surge of energy, respond to it using a simple sequence. First, notice the option in your present moment that carries even the slightest bit more excitement than the others. Second, act on that excitement to the absolute best of your ability, taking it as far as it can naturally go. Finally, release all insistence on exactly how the specific outcome should look. This is where the navigation begins. You don't need a grand, detailed plan. Following a small curiosity, even just reading a book, calling a friend, or taking a walk, keeps your internal dial tuned to the right frequency. By acting on the feeling, but letting go of the expectation, you allow the physical world the space to catch up without interrupting the signal. This process works best when followed with light curiosity, rather than the heavy pressure of needing an immediate result. What small excitement have you been ignoring recently? If this perspective resonates with you, consider subscribing for more explorations like this. The change rarely starts with something dramatic. It usually appears as a quiet curiosity in the middle of a completely normal day. Imagine you are working on a routine task when an unexpected impulse tells you to take a different route for your afternoon walk. Logic says it makes no difference, but you decide to follow that slight spark of interest anyway.
While walking down that unfamiliar street, you notice a flyer for an event, or run into someone who just happens to have the exact answer to a problem you've been stuck on. You didn't plan that encounter. You simply followed the internal signal, and the physical reality rearranged itself to match your new frequency. This is often how the shift actually begins. You take one small step based purely on what feels interesting, and a subtle chain reaction unfolds. You have likely experienced moments exactly like this before, dismissing them as pure luck without realizing their true significance. You are simply watching the mechanism work in real time. When you trust the feeling before the proof arrives, everyday life becomes a constant stream of synchronicity. Have you ever followed a small curiosity that led somewhere entirely unexpected? When you begin to witness these small synchronicities unfold, you realize this process is not just a psychological trick. The energy you feel before anything happens is not an illusion. It points to a much larger architecture. The life you are seeking does not need to be built from scratch through endless struggle. It already exists as a fully formed potential reality, broadcasting on a frequency you simply haven't tuned into yet. Suddenly, the pattern reveals a deeper meaning. Excitement is not merely an emotion. It is the actual physical sensation of your consciousness making contact with that alternate version of your life. The feeling itself is the literal bridge between where you are and where you are going. This suggests something remarkable about the nature of experience. You are never truly forcing a new path into existence. You are simply navigating through infinite possibilities using the compass of your own inner resonance. You may already be standing at the threshold of this realization in your own life, feeling the quiet pull of a reality that is just waiting for you to hold the signal. How different would your daily choices be if you treated your excitement as an actual map guiding you through existence? The sudden energy you feel before anything happens is not a false alarm. It is a quiet compass pointing directly toward a reality that is already waiting for you. As you step back into your routine today, you may begin noticing these subtle shifts in frequency almost immediately. The old friction might start to look less like bad luck and more like a gentle reminder to adjust your internal dial. Perhaps the signal has been there all along, quietly guiding you through the small curiosities you usually brush aside. Sometimes the most profound shift in experience begins simply by paying attention. What subtle impulse is waiting for your attention right now?
If you are curious about the deeper mechanics behind this alignment, the video appearing on your screen explores exactly how these small choices begin to physically reshape your timeline.